Greetings and hello. Welcome to day one of the virtual workshop series on #AltAC and Com, exploring career options beyond the Academy for Communication PhDs. Today's workshops focus on the theme AltAC from Academy to Industry. This virtual workshop series is being broadcasted from the Tohono O'odham, Akimel Utham, and Peeposh lands in Arizona. My name is Sarah J. Tracy. I'm a professor at Arizona State University, and I thank the National Communication Association Advancing the Discipline Project, the Transformation Project, and the Hugh Downs School of Human Communication for generously funding this series. So why this series and why now? Well, we believe that it's important to cultivate opportunities outside of the Academy for career options. We are pretty good as a discipline in communication at professional development for folks who desire academic jobs. But an ongoing issue is the decrease in tenure track jobs. And this has accelerated in the last year with the hiring freezes due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We're so glad to have you here. Now, because of our large numbers today, you will be muted during the presentation. But chat and nonverbal expression is welcome. This is an interactive meeting. We just ask that you please keep it professional and on point. Also, a reminder, this event will be recorded and will be posted publicly, likely on the National Communication Association website. We will only record and post the speaker view, and the question and answer will not be publicly posted, but it will be recorded for security reasons. If you do not want to be on the recording, do feel free to keep your camera off and you will likely stay muted anyway. Now the schedule for the day is follows. We're going to start with our workshop and presentation with Dr. Kiesinger. Then we're going to move in, that's going to be for about a half hour. Then we're going to move into about 10 to 15 minutes of question and answer. Then we're going to have a short break, a 5-minute break. And then we will segue into our introduction of our second speaker today, Dr. Waters. And then we'll have his presentation and then another 15 minutes of Q&A. And we should be wrapping up by about after 2 hours total, which is 5 o'clock in Arizona. So that is our schedule. We are so pleased to have here with us today our speakers. And I am going to segue to one of our amazing doctoral students in the Hugh Downs School of Human Communication, Carrie Lopez, who is going to go ahead and introduce Dr. Kiesinger. Carrie?
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning from wherever you might be joining us from. As Dr. Tracy mentioned, my name is Carrie Lopez. I'm a fourth-year doctoral student in communication at the Hugh Downs School of Human Communication. And I'm so honored to welcome our first guest. Dr. Christine E. Kiesinger earned a PhD in Communication Studies at the University of South Florida in 1995. Her work focuses on emotional intelligence, leadership, communication, conflict, mindfulness, and transformation. Dr. Kiesinger is the founder of CEK Communication, a consulting firm that offers executive, team, and individual training. Additionally, she serves as VP of Development and Lead Trainer of Emotional Intelligence and Conscious Communication at Studio BE, a company that offers mindfulness meditation and professional enhancement training in corporate contexts. Concurrent to her work as a professional development trainer, Dr. Kiesinger worked in academia for 30 years. She has held professorships and leadership positions at the University of Virginia, the University of South Florida, Southwestern University, and the George Washington University. In addition to her lifelong vocation as a teacher, Dr. Kiesinger is a published author, sought-after speaker, retreat leader, guest blogger, and interviewer. In her workshop today called Leaving Home, Finding Place, Purpose, and Possibilities Outside the Walls of Academia, Dr. Kiesinger will explore what it means to leave academia in search of new places where the ideas and tools of our discipline can live, thrive, and be practiced in environments so in need of what we study and teach. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kiesinger.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. When I was invited to participate, it was an immediate, full-bodied yes. So I want to launch right in because I have so much to share with you about my journey, and I really do hope that it will be of benefit. This image to me is really important because it's often the way that I felt when I made the decision to leave academia. And my leaving, of course, has quite a narrative to it, and it may not be very different from yours should you decide, or if you decide to really blend an academic and a non-academic life, which is so possible. So I want to share with you that I had 4 different epiphanies that bring me to this very moment where I am sitting with you here today. And they were very sudden revelations. They were profound understandings of something all related to my academic and my professional career. The first was when I was 22 years old, a brand new graduate student at the University of Virginia. Just 3 days before the beginning of my very first semester, I was handed a public speaking book and a sample syllabus. And I was told, Christine, as part of your fellowship, you will be teaching 2 undergraduate courses in public speaking. And in those days, this indeed did happen. I had no experience whatsoever. But on that Monday morning, within the first 60 seconds of being with my students, I had the epiphany. You are meant to be here. This is what you are meant to do. Academia is to be your home. Welcome. It was as if the universe was saying, welcome. We hope you will stay a long while. And I did. The next epiphany occurred when I was a tenured professor living right outside of Austin, Texas, loving my job. And then I met the man who would be my husband and the toddler children who would become my children. My husband was widowed with 2 small babies. When I met them, my son, who's in this photo, was about 18 months old. And I knew that if I was going to join them as part of their family, I was going to have to leave this beloved job. When my son, the child who had become my son, at about this time in his life looked at me and called me mom, I knew that I was about to embark on a different kind of journey and that academia wasn't part of that. I accepted that invitation and I never looked back. The third photo is the photo that represents yet a third epiphany that occurred in December of 2018 when I was teaching as an adjunct professor at a local university here in northeastern Pennsylvania. I was having a conversation with my students about the trajectory of an academic path, and I heard myself say the words, "This is my last semester. I'm resigning." I didn't know where the words came from. It was an out-of-body experience, but in my mind's eye, at the moment of speaking the words, I could see doors opening. And I trusted. And it was a wonderful semester. I was teaching a course called Creativity and Innovation in Leadership. It was the most creative course I've ever taught. I had a great group of students, and I thought, this is the perfect time to say goodbye. I did, and I haven't looked back. The fourth epiphany just occurred 2 weeks ago, when I was commissioned by Head Start to create a relational approach to the treatment of trauma in children. As most of you know, Head Start children come from extreme poverty-stricken families, families within which there is a great deal of trauma, whether it's trauma associated with food scarcity, poverty, substance abuse, physical, emotional, interpersonal, sexual violence. And so I developed a training in trauma that is interpersonal in nature, in the sense that the treatment of trauma is about many things, but ultimately it is about how it is that we can relate to these children in such a way that leads them to feel safe and valued and that gives them a sense that they have a purpose and they have a future. This particular training was a turning point for me because it blended the following things. It blended all the work I've done in the area of interpersonal communication, family system theory, the relational dynamics of abuse and trauma, the role that language and nonverbal communication plays in healing, and the role that communication plays in establishing psychological safety. My compass led me to this moment, and teaching about trauma from a relational point of view puts me in a position in the realm of trauma of offering something that's very different in terms of what's being offered in trauma-sensitive trainings this year, and there are a plethora of them. So that just kind of gives you a quick overview of these 4 epiphanies that bring me to where I sit now, and I'm sure that there will be many others as the journey continues. But I want to share with you just a brief timeline to give you a context. I finished my doctoral work in 1995 and accepted a tenure track position at Southwestern University, a small liberal arts university that was perfect for me because I value teaching the most. I had a very unusual invitation, and that was to take over the position as department chair when I was an untenured faculty member. I embraced the opportunity. I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew that everything I knew about communication would assist me in being a really good leader. In many ways, I had the dream job. And then I met the man who would become my husband and the children who would become my children. And I left in 2006. I was warned by colleagues, mentors, and friends, you don't leave tenure. And so that felt like I was free falling out of a plane without a parachute. One mentor who has been my rock said to me, Christine, if you leave, you will be committing academic suicide. It was that dire, and it was difficult. And did I commit academic suicide? No, but there were costs to leaving. And those costs were never being in a position again where tenure has been offered to me. But that's another seminar. I've held visiting lines over the course of the years, 2006 through 2011, when I moved to Northeastern Pennsylvania. Those visiting lines, which pay more than adjunct lines, became
Christine, you're on mute. There you go.
Yeah. Where did I leave? What did you not hear?
The visiting lines, that's where we dropped
Held many visiting lines over between 2006 and 2011. In fact, my position at George Washington University was a visiting line. They pay much more than adjunct positions. When I moved to the Northeast, however, 2011 through 2018, I was in adjunct status and strictly working because it was a labor of love and I wanted to still be with students. But in 2015, I really began expanding outside of academic walls and experimenting with what it meant to take all of the things that I know into corporate environments. That work started in 2015, and it's how I built my business. And it's what I do exclusively today. And the good news is even more so over the course of the last year when I thought that I would just be flattened by COVID. The opposite is true. My work has truly flourished. But in these moments of leaving, I always wondered, can I find a place? Will I find a place outside of academia? Will there be possibilities for me? And will I be able to work in ways that felt really meaningful and purposeful? The road often felt like this. It was academic or non-academic life. And that's where the squeeze was and the tension was. The next time you find yourself in that moment, pay attention to what you think to how you feel and to what you do when you reach this choice point, because I stood right there for a long time. And I discovered that perhaps it's not either or, but it can be both and. And what could I grow at the intersection of an academic and a non-academic life? Because what I've learned and what I work on every single day is I see that there is a way in which the non-academic and the academic world mutually inform each other. I cannot be in either without the presence of the other. So what can you grow at the intersection of what can feel like an either or? So I want to share with you really quickly that professionally I work currently in 4 different domains. One of them is in corporate professional development. I just wanted to provide you here with a slide of some of the titles of trainings that I lead on a regular basis. These would be my top 10. And I want to highlight a few of those that have been very, very popular and necessary over the last year. One is, how do leaders navigate crisis and transition? In other words, how do we communicate strategically during crisis? What does professionalism and effectiveness look like when we're video conferencing? How can you take the principles and practice of really good public speaking and have it translate over into this virtual environment? My goodness, how do we create workplace cultures that are really taking care of employees and teams so that they can function, even flourish during great transition and change? So lots of work in the realm of culture, lots of work in the realm of resiliency, and very, very recently, and I did not think that I would be working in this realm, working in the realm of diversity, equity, inclusion, and most of those trainings I tie to the word belonging. How can we be with each other in such a way that we create a workplace culture of belonging? So that just gives you a sense. Feel free to take a screenshot of this slide. There's lots of other things here that I did not mention, but I would say these are my top 10 trainings. If you've got a background in communication, you can do this work. I also work in the realm of coaching. I have a very robust personal professional coaching practice. Sometimes that even involves coach me into making a presentation, coach me in speech writing, coach me as a writer. A lot of my work is in the area of well-being, physical, cognitive, emotional, relational, and professional. What does it mean to be well? As I mentioned, resiliency and stress management. And one of my favorites is work-life integration, tossing out the word balance. There's no balance anymore. How do we integrate? And then I occasionally am in an academic world as a guest lecturer, special events speaker, and occasionally I do accept adjunct opportunities, but only if I love the subject matter. I'm going to be teaching next semester organizational communication because I just want to do it. Okay, so it's no more I have to do it, I have to stay connected to the discipline. It's because I just feel like I want to do it. So those are some of the realms that I work in professionally through my business. But what I wanted to do is to spend the final part of this presentation guiding you through a 5-step process that can really help you to create a path forward. And you can create this path forward and just have it in a notebook somewhere. There may be an opportunity years from now where you're thinking back and thinking, you know what, I want to stick my toe in this non-academic environment and see what I can create. This presentation is accompanied by a handout. Some of you may have it already, and if you don't, you will receive it. But the handout really dives into this process very, very deeply so that you have everything you need. So I want to highlight some things about the steps. First step, identify your areas of expertise. So here's the way that you can do that. You can ask yourself, or you can use this as a prompt. if someone were to refer to you as a communication specialist, what do you specialize in? The reason I share this is because recently another organization who actually hires out people like me, finds people like me, and hires people like me out, said to me, how do you want to refer to yourself? And they said, from what we can gather, we would like to refer to you as a communication specialist or a communication strategist, or maybe both. So if someone were to refer to you in that way, what would that mean? What do you specialize in? What is your area of expertise? My list might look like this: interpersonal communication, family communication, systems theory, qualitative methods, autoethnography, narrative inquiry, even public speaking. And I do not want to diminish the value of any of you here who are listening, the value of being able to teach public speaking skills outside of academia. It is so needed, it is so embraced, and it is lucrative. I have to just toss that in. So that's step one. What are your areas of expertise? Step two is fun. Step two is, what are areas of specialization, areas of interest, things that I really know about, certifications that I might have that may or may not have anything to do with academia? I'm a certified coach. I'm certified in Marshall Rosenberg's Nonviolent Conflict Resolution Protocol. I'm a certified yoga and meditation teacher. That is what helps me or infuses the work I do in the area of well-being. I'm an integrative health practitioner. I have special training in dying and death, special training in hospice care. I'm certified in trauma-sensitive care. I have special training in what's called the exemplary leadership model. These are just some of the things that I've done along the way that I've pulled upon to help to shape how I present myself in atmospheres that are not academic in nature. So it's really important that in your reflection phase that you take these two steps. What is my expertise and what is my expertise as an academic? And what areas of specialization do I have that might merge well with my areas of expertise as an academic? You'd be surprised at what your list looks like. I could keep adding to this list. There are things that you will forget about that are really relevant. So really allow yourself, make these lists without any kind of judgment and see what you come up with. Step 3 is developing. I have what I call, they're these really big sketching pads, and I call them my map books. And what I do with the map book is I map out talks, workshops, seminars, trainings that are all related to my areas of expertise and my specializations. Some of them are bucket list trainings. Some of them are trainings that I was asked to create, commissioned to create. But over time, you can do this in your spare time. It's a really kind of an artistic endeavor. You can look back at everything that you've created and you can start to pull from all of that. And this should be something that you're doing not in any rushed way. This should be something you do that's very, very similar to journaling. But my map notebooks, I'm always reaching for them. There might be something in a map notebook that I wrote about 3 years ago that is really relevant to some of the work that I'm called upon to do now. Step 4 is probably the most important step, and that is visibility. Before I talk about visibility, I just want to share with you something with relationship to development. I want to give you just a couple of examples of what development might look like. So you've got your areas of expertise, your specialization, and then you have this opportunity to develop. So here's some questions. I'm going to give you an example from my own experience that I might ask. For example, how does my expertise in family systems theory help me to customize a training for an organization that just did a huge merger and is wondering, why is our organizational culture falling apart? I can help them to understand why that is and what to do about that through family systems theory. How does my background as an ethnographer help me to listen to and to engage executive decision makers in such a way that I can kind of listen for the issues, diagnose, take a little bit of time and create a prescription for what the identified problems are, and that bring that back to them so that they can create corporate culture that's really thriving. Those are ethnographic skills. How does my background in systems theory help me do an intervention on a team that's worked really, really well but is in crisis and needs to be brought back together? Team dynamics, doing interventions so that teams can get back on track and thrive. We know how to do that as communication studies people. How does my training in interpersonal communication help me to train managers, HR executives in how to give feedback and how to give performance reviews in ways that are really supportive? We know how to do this, especially those of us who study interpersonal communication, but they don't. Okay, so this is how you begin to develop. You imagine what are some of the problems and issues that organizations might be facing. How can I help them to solve those issues with the skills that I have? Someone said to me about 7 years ago, it was actually a person who owns a marketing agency, and she said, you know, Christine, and she's a good friend of mine, she said, organizations need what you have to offer, but they don't know that they need it, and they don't know how to find you. You have an issue with visibility. As an academic and academic training, I was really trained to be a solo act. And never once in my doctoral program was it ever mentioned that there might be other things that you might do. I had no training in doing what I'm doing now. Visibility has been essential. Offer to speak and to do speaking events as often as possible to share your skills and knowledge, and oftentimes do it for free. I'll give you one example. About 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, I was asked to develop a whole curriculum for a leadership training program called Leadership Wilkes-Barre. By the way, most cities have a leadership program like this, so you can plug in. They asked me to develop an entire curriculum for 5 of their programs. I not only developed the curriculum, I facilitated it for 1 year for free. But here's what I got. Every month of that year, I was in front of 500 to 1,000 people in person delivering these leadership trainings. Those individuals would go back to their organizations and say, we would like to bring Christine in. So sometimes you've got to do things for free, but put a time limit on it. You know, I still continue to work with that organization, but they pay me now. They don't pay me a lot, but this is how I get a lot of my corporate accounts, you know, in doing that. So speak. If you have local media during COVID, I made connections just with our local media, and I volunteered to do little short segments on, you know, how to preserve your family relationships when you're together 24/7. How do we manage the stress levels in our children during COVID? I just volunteered to do that. You're on television. Your name gets associated with being on television, and then people can reach out to you. Published blogs, guest or otherwise, has been invaluable. I want to turn you on to something called HARO. HARO is an acronym for Help a Reporter Out. HARO is an organization that takes your information, and every day they feed you opportunities to provide a quote and to sometimes write for outlets. And it was through HARO that I was able to get published in Medium. And if your Medium publication gets enough looks, then you get to rise up and into Thrive Global, which was Arianna Huffington's platform. So you have information to share, and seek that out. Post on social media as often as possible, things that you're doing, things that you're interested in, even what you're working on academically. I take every opportunity to share what I'm doing, especially on LinkedIn. If someone asks you to be on a podcast, agree to it. It's a great way to get visibility. Networking. Like I described, Leadership Wilkes-Barre, which is a community-based leadership program, they are all over the world. Plugging into something like that was the most important thing I've ever done to establish visibility. Connecting to your local chamber of commerce, sharing with them what you do, what you can do. The Society for Human Resource Management, invaluable. They have a speakers bureau. They're always looking for communication specialists, experts, to be part of their speakers bureau. Other publication outlets, non-academic, Harvard Business Review, Forbes, Thrive Global. If you take a look at the kinds of things that are published in Harvard Business Review, you can just have, look at those articles very freely. They are so relevant to what we do as communication studies folks. And you can perhaps envision yourself writing for them. And then finally, support. Again, I think we're very well trained in being solo acts as academics. And it was hard for me to ask for support. In 2015, when I was doing the work for free for Leadership Wilkes-Barre, I committed to having what I call 25 coffee conversations in 1 year. And this was just making appointments with key decision makers and talking with them about the way that I felt I could contribute to their organization. Letting business owners, colleagues, and friends know what you're doing and what you aspire to do. We know how to have memorable conversations. So any kind of networking conversation that you have, you want to be memorable, you want to be remembered, you want your business card to be at the top of the pile of the business cards that person collected during that event. Hiring a virtual assistant, hiring someone to build a website. By the way, I've not done that part yet, but I do have a virtual assistant. And that was really hard for me. I thought as a communication studies person, I should know how to market myself, promote myself, but I didn't. I don't have those skills, and so she's been invaluable. In fact, she's not only invaluable, she's incredibly affordable. She created the handout you have. I told her, put on the last page your contact information should anyone here wish to work with you. And I have had discovery sessions with marketing and branding companies. Those have been invaluable. Although I've not taken that step yet, I'm on the precipice of that. It's quite expensive, but you learn a lot about yourself. And what you learn about is you get an outside view of what your superpowers are. And this is the last thing that I want to say. What are the superpowers that you have? When I did a discovery session with a marketing company about 6 years ago, they sent a couple of their people out to attend some of the live trainings that I was doing. And one of the employees, one of the marketers said to me, Christine, you're an experience. What we would want to brand is, what is the experience of Christine? And I thought, we are all an experience. When you show up, someone gets an experience of you. So when I'm in a corporate environment, they're paying for the experience of me delivering this content. So what is the experience of you? And what are all of the things that you're doing now that contribute to the experience of you? How do you show up? Because I have background in ethnography and I know how to interview well, I can diagnose organizational issues pretty quickly. I can take the content of those conversations and identify themes and the narratives that have been shared for me so that I can tailor make, customize a training for that organization. I can create pretty immediate identification and connection because I never leave myself out of the work that I'm doing. Having very strong interpersonal, ethical, persuasive skills, also really important. As my colleague said, hey, people need what you have to offer. They don't know they need you, so you have to persuade them that they need you, and that's what you do in the first 30 minutes in chatting with a prospective client. I can translate areas of academic expertise into non-academic environments. That takes practice, and you can do it. And that's a really, really important part of all of this. Be creative. Like, what does the social construction of reality, the theory of social construction of reality look like in a corporate boardroom when there's all this tension around how are we going to change our culture? So how do you creatively weave in theory without even mentioning what the theory is? And of course, presenting really well. So these are things that I would identify as my superpowers that contribute to the experience of me. You have them too. Identify them, leverage them, consider them your gifts. Sometimes my journey has felt like the leap into the unknown. Sometimes it has felt like the free fall, but mostly it's felt like this. It felt really lonely. It's really felt like such a risk. It's like, okay, if you're leaving, pack your bags because you're not coming back. But it was never an either or. I refused to see it that way. And you are not alone should you wish to explore alternatives, because mostly it's been this. What could I create at the intersection of an academic and a non-academic life? What could I grow? And this is where I am, and this is where I will continue to be. And I just really invite you to think about it in a similar way. And again, no one ever said to me, you know, think about other possibilities. I mean, it was almost, I mean, I can't even fathom being a doctoral student and thinking about doing anything else but having an academic life. And I never would have imagined that my path would have been what it is, and I have no idea what's ahead. And this is why it has been so important for me to be here with you. I'm really passionate about this, and I just want you all to know that you're not alone and that you can create and grow something beautiful at that intersection of both and. Thank you.
Yay, let's give it up for Dr. Christine Kiesinger. A reminder, you can use your reactions. So if you had any reactions, feel free to use those. And thank you, thank you. we have a number of questions, and I've been synthesizing them along the way, and there may be more that come in, and I'm just going to put them in the chat just so that everybody can kind of see what the questions are. But Christine, don't worry that I will also, gosh, it doesn't look all that good in the chat, but I'm going to just put it there anyway because Dr. Waters might be interested in seeing the questions as well. We have about 10 minutes or so for Q&A, and I want to start us off with a question about those good warnings. How do students deal with these good warnings, or maybe they're not so good, about academic suicide as they're leaving? Because students are in this precarious place. They need to have their advisors approve of them, or, you know, if they're on the fence and they don't know where they're going, they don't want to cut the ties. So any recommendations there?
You know, at the time that I received the good warnings, I didn't have any kind of preparation for the good warnings. The phrase professional suicide rocked me to my core.
It's very violent.
Yeah, and I knew in that moment that there would be a cost. I just didn't know what it was going to be. In a lot of ways, it was the free fall. So in retrospect, I wish that I would have had something like this, that would have sort of been a parachute of sorts that said, you know, we don't know entirely where you're going to land, Christine, but you are so supported by everything that you know and everything that you've worked so hard for. So I'm here to tell you that, again, there is this possibility, but I also want to name that there's a stigma attached to the person who leaves. And I got to a point where one of the things that I decided to do, especially when I left to become a full-time mom for a period of time and went into all those visiting professor situations, I always wanted to have one foot in academia. So I was either teaching part-time, I continued to write and publish, and I continued to attend NCA and other regional conferences or, you know, discipline-specific conferences. So I kept my foot in. But I'll tell you, a day came when I showed up at NCA, and when you were picking up the name tag, they said, well, who are you? Right? Well, I'm Dr. Christine Kiesinger. Well, but you don't have an affiliation. And I said, please put independent scholar on my tag. And they didn't want to do it. I said, that's what I'm doing, put independent scholar. Because I didn't even have my company at the time. And it was a moment of empowerment because they didn't want to do it. And I've done that ever since. And so that was the moment that I owned it. And then I remember being on the elevator a couple of times and people saying, what does that mean?
It makes me think we need a new division called independent scholars, right? Why don't we have that as a division?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I don't know if that's an answer to the question because, again, I didn't have preparation for the warning. I knew that I was leaving home. Mm-hmm. That's how it felt. But I love that image. Was packing my bag and I was leaving home. I knew that I guess I really didn't entirely know how hard it would be to get tenure again. What the situations I found myself in was, well, we could hire you with a couple of years toward tenure. I didn't want to go through that again, right? Right. And then we don't hire anyone. If you had it before, we're starting the clock again. And I thought, no way, I'm not doing that. And then, as you mentioned, which is part of the reason that we're here, when I graduated in 1995, there were a plethora of jobs. There were so many jobs. Getting a job was not a problem, a tenure track job.
Mhm.
But it is now. It's a real challenge. And I'm not sure what lies ahead
Mhm.
and what academia is even going to look like. And I will tell you that when I made the announcement of I'm retiring, which by the way was almost to the date my 30-year mark in teaching at an academic level, because I started as that 22-year-old graduate student. My brother had said to me, Christine, do the math with your adjunct salary. When you factor in prep, grading, class time, office hours, and having to pay for parking, $2 an hour.
Wow. Yeah, the math can be overwhelming and interesting. I had my students who are taking a course associated with this right now in the last week figure out how many dollars of educational services they delivered through teaching. And then I said, how does this feel? And many of them, I mean, it was just stark sort of, oh my gosh, this is how much my graduate stipend is, and this is how many dollars I'm delivering. Another thing that comes up is this issue of money. You mentioned public speaking is lucrative, but I have found that many academics actually kind of shy away from talking about money, like it's somehow dirty. You're supposed to be in this because you're passionate about the topic. Do you have any thoughts on how to navigate that or any other details? I'm sure we have a lot of curious people here that would be like, well, how lucrative is public speaking if I were to take that training on the road?
Yeah, so two things I want to say about it is, as someone who had academic training and lived that life, which, my expectation was I'm not going to make a lot of money doing this, but I do it because I love it. So I was shocked when I started taking corporate jobs at what they wanted to pay me. And I really had to get well versed in how to price something because I was completely undervaluing myself. So presently, 1 hour of a workshop for me is priced at $425 for the hour. And that includes the workshop, and that also includes some sort of handout, resources, and if they want to have access to me. I've even lowballed that. It can be anywhere between $425 and $750 an hour, just for an hour. And again, for me, that was mind-blowing. So really doing your homework around what people are making and then actually looking at what you're doing. My leadership series, because I'm not a believer in one and dones, I try to get organizations to make a commitment. Why? Because when they can begin to start speaking the language and using the terminology of the training, that's when you start to see corporate cultures actually make positive shifts. So if someone wants to buy 12 months of a leadership program or whatever it is, I can price that in a certain way. And I always, will say, there's a discount if you buy the year, that sort of thing. But I'm more than happy and I'm available for any of you who even might want, if you just want to stick your toe in the water. Maybe you're in a position where I could use some additional income. So maybe I will, put myself out there as someone who can train an organization in how do you lead a team meeting well on Zoom? We know how to do that. Most of us know how to do that. We have the skills, we have the knowledge. It's just translating it over. And as my colleague said, organizations need us. They just don't know it. And they have to be able to find us.
For sure. That's one of the main things. I mean, even getting on LinkedIn, for many academics, it makes our teeth itch. And that's where the connections, from what I've heard from people like you, is, that's where we got to go. We have one last question, if we need to be quick with it, but it is from one of our participants, Samantha. And she asked, so being an undergrad in 2010, 10 years later, graduating with a PhD, what if this is our passion and calling, this being in academia? When do we call it quits? When should we facilitate that mental capacity of changing? I think this conversation is so important, but for a lot of people right now, we just don't feel like we have a choice, if that makes sense.
Yes, and I want you to know that you have a choice. If my circumstances were different, if I hadn't met my husband and the children, I might very well still be teaching at Southwestern University. I loved that place. I loved the academic environment, but just these things happened and, really put me in a position of understanding that I could grow something, again, at the intersection of an academic and a non-academic life. Calling it quit, it was my passion and my purpose for so long. And I have to tell you that there's something so cool about teaching what we teach, translating it over into these environments where there are people who are absolutely hungering for what we have to offer. And the last thing I'll say is when I was working, or I am working in an ongoing way in this trauma training series with these teachers that, as far as I'm concerned, are frontline workers in being in classrooms with children who have experienced trauma that we can't even comprehend. And if I can train them interpersonally, how to be with these children in a way that actually gives them the opportunity to have the experience of a healthy relationship, then I'm right where I need to be.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr.
You're so welcome.
For your time and for your expertise. I am going to put a question, y'all, in the chat box for the participants. And it's a final question. What is one thing you learned from Dr. Kiesinger's workshop that you'll take away with you? Feel free to share here or any other reactions. You can do that in the chat. We're always kind of interested in what people take away. And Christine, I know you haven't had your eye on the chat, but you've been getting lots of love throughout. And thank you for your vulnerability and sharing and tips and all of that. So what we're up to next is we are going to take a short break. And let's see, let's take a look at our time here. We will return right at the top of the hour and begin at the top of the hour with Dr. Eric Waters. So go ahead, feel free to do whatever you like to do during a break, and we will see you in about 5 minutes. Thank you.